and you touched on this too, the importance of them understanding how valuable their input is. That is the key to all of this, is knowing that the work that they do every day makes a difference to the overall picture. And then how we do those nitty-gritty details, their input is extremely valuable.
Welcome to Culture Change RX, the podcast for healthcare professionals that are committed to creating a thriving workplace culture, improving the experiences of employees and patients, and ultimately unlocking their organization's next level of potential. I'm Sue Tetzloff, your host and co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Join me and my insightful guests each week as we share actionable insights for navigating the crucial people side of the business of healthcare. Subscribe now for a weekly dose of Culture Change RX. Now let's dive into this week's conversation where culture change takes center stage. Welcome to another episode of Culture Change RX. And this is one of those episodes that I delight in recording, and that's a guest episode with a leader that is working in healthcare. In particular, we love to specialize our work in rural healthcare. So having a leader that's working day to day in the field in rural healthcare, it is my pleasure to have people like Shelby Guevara here in our studio today as a guest.
Thank you, Sue. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and just be able to have a good conversation with you today. So my background really started as a NICU nurse. I'm a RN by trade. I am a CNO at a small critical access hospital in rural Iowa, and I've been in this role for about 2.5 years. But I did start as that frontline nurse in the NICU, taking care of those sweet babes, and then kind of worked my way up through some different opportunities where leadership kind of takes you in a different path sometimes. So ended up in a hospital setting again, did some home health, did some clinic work, did some quality work. So really have a sure-footed foundation in what the root of healthcare is, right? And that's quality. That's quality healthcare. So kind of had some different roots in that realm, and then ended up in this role right now as a CNO here in Iowa. And I'm loving every minute of it. There's challenges, but there's also so many wins that come with that.
My background also was peppered with some work in quality. And I say once you've done that work in particular, been so focused on that, you just can't leave it behind, right? It just stays with you all along the way, whatever you do next.
Right. It is always there. Absolutely. It just sets that foundation to truly know processes and procedures and why we do things a certain way, and knowing what evidence-based care is and really being able to tap into that. That foundation never leaves.
So this podcast is about people, and it's about the people side of healthcare. And certainly in your role as now a senior leader, it gives you an opportunity to lead leaders. When I was a senior leader, that's what I said, I lead leaders, right? And also to lead change. And so let's start with talking about leading leaders and strengthening and synergizing leaders in your organization, whether it's at the senior leadership team level, your nursing team level, entire organization level. What can you say about how that's going in your organization, and maybe any stories or examples of success there?
Sure. So, Sue, one of the questions when I was interviewing for my role as a CNO that somebody asked me, and this has really stuck with me, is, are you sad that you'll be leaving patient care? How are you going to fill that gap in your life? And my response to that really was, it's not about leaving that aspect. I'm still impacting patient care, but from patient care to caring for my leadership team and the people that I lead, putting all of my time and effort into that aspect instead of, having that frontline nursing care. I'm still practicing in that way, but shifting my mindset in caring for those individuals that I assist to lead. So, that's really stuck with me over the last couple of years when I've really transitioned out of bedside nursing. But a few of the examples that I have here at our facility is we do a lot of promoting from within. We have people that start their nursing careers with us and really kind of grow with us, which is a unique opportunity. Some of the larger organizations might not have that opportunity, but within our organization, we're small enough. We know everybody. Everybody greets everyone with a first name basis. You just get to know those individuals, and kind of the people that you see as your shining stars. How do you help them to grow and become that next leader within your organization? So I have a couple of nurse leads that we've promoted from within. And one of the things that I really, really value is getting to know them on a personal level to some extent, to be able to know what really empowers them, what intrigues them, what inspires them. And taking the time to get to know that is what helps you to be able to grow those leaders, because you know kind of how they work internally, how they're working, how their minds are spinning, how they think outside of the box, or maybe, not so much, so how do you help with those pieces? And that's been the most challenging yet rewarding pieces of being a leader within this organization, is being able to take the extra time. We all know time is of the essence. Sometimes you don't always have a lot of time, but it is imperative as a leader to be able to devote that time to those individuals to truly get to know them. That's how you build trust. That's how you build collaboration. That's how you build just the overall development of their personal journey. So one of the things that we started with, or that I started with rather, is getting to know them personally, but then bringing them into our group of leaders. So getting them around like-minded people that are in leadership, that are potentially having the same struggles, having the same wins, having the same potential, issues. How do we tap into those things as a group? I don't have all the answers. They don't have all the answers. So how do we get them together in a room to brainstorm together? And I would say that has had the largest impact in the shortest amount of time, is getting them together in a room, building that relationship with those individuals that they work alongside with every single day. At first, we don't like to talk about the C word here, and what happened a couple of years ago, but that really took people out of meeting in person and talking in person. And there's something to be said about small groups when you work in a small organization, getting together, being comfortable talking to one another in a group setting. And we've come so far in the last 2 years with being able to do that again. And that's really helped with being able to establish those relationships, nurture those relationships, and grow those individuals. Another piece of building these leaders is building the trust. So understanding that there will be some disagreements, there will be some celebrations, there'll be those things. And at the end of the day, we have a path that we need to go as an organization. So how do you help people to trust your vision, trust the overall picture of the organization and where we're going, even if they don't agree with something right away? And that's by building trust, listening to their concerns, being able to talk through those, being able to escalate any real concerns that they feel are emergent or urgent, working through those things and following through. That's how you build the trust, to be able to work through any issues or get people on the same page and trust where leadership is going. Another piece is emotional intelligence or empathy, making sure that we are empathetic to not only their professional lives, but also a smidgen of their personal lives. Everybody feels there's a little bit of a balance when it comes to that. But I truly feel that a work-life balance or integration is so important. If people have things where they're not able to do certain things in their personal life, that impacts them as a professional too, because their mind is not here. It's at home. It's worrying about those things. So having that relationship with your leaders where they can say, hey, I might be a little bit off today because I have X, Y, and Z going on, but I will do my best to self-regulate and get right back on track. Being that person that they can come to and share that with is huge. They didn't start by doing that. And it wasn't comfortable at first to have to call them out on those things and say, hey, I noticed you're a little bit off today. What's going on? What can I help you with? That is imperative. So now they know I'm going to ask. If they come in and their mood is a little dysregulated or they aren't their normal selves in the morning, I'm going to ask them what's going on. So now they come to me first before I even have to ask, because they know that I'm in tune with what's going on with their body language, their, how they just show up to work each day. So I think that helps to build those leaders too, is to recognize that you have to show up as your best self every day, no matter what's going on. So let's talk about it. We're a safe space. We can have those deeper conversations as your leader. And then that encourages them to do the same with their their team as well. And then, another piece that I would really hone in on is conflict resolution and problem solving. We know that everybody has a personality. Everybody has their own viewpoint. Some people are more open to others' viewpoints than maybe others are. So when it comes to that, my approach is generally not doing things over email, not doing things over a messenger type form, but getting the people in the room to discuss it together, outlining clearly what the issue is at hand, and then kind of lay the floor out with, can you maybe share your side of the story and what your workflow is, and then have the next person do the same. You really kind of play that mediator role to help them bridge that gap. And then they are able to do that on their own once you've laid that foundation for a strong kind of beginning of what that process should look like and what the meeting should look like. And that's really been helpful, at least in my experience, with bridging a few gaps when you've got stronger personalities in a room, being able to make people feel comfortable and that their input is valued. That's really had a huge impact on just the culture in general, knowing that it's okay to disagree, but at the end of the day, we're going to have to come to some conclusion and how to help them do that, and then have them grow in that role so that you don't always have to be there as that mediator, but you have to start somewhere. You have to set that foundation.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Now, to touch on our senior team that we have in place, we're a small group. There's 5 of us. We've all been in healthcare. We've all kind of lived the life of a frontline person. Not all of us have a clinical background. Some of us have business. Some of us have HR. And then I kind of hold that clinical background. So being able to loop all of us together and have open conversation, that doesn't happen overnight. You just don't expect that that's going to happen when you walk into that room. We have to build a trusting relationship with one another and be able to say, I'm going to let my guard down when I come into this room, and we're going to have a true conversation about our thoughts, our processes, what our staff are feeling, what we're feeling, what we feel is best for the patient and the safety, and where we need to go financially. Just having people in that room that are able to share their viewpoint and be able to truly talk through it with our guards down has helped us tremendously as an organization to be able to be on the same page.
Yeah. When you talk about being on the same page, I think that's a common theme through everything you've mentioned so far, Shelby, is when you're building relationships, when you're resolving conflict, when you're working to develop your leaders, when you're focused on continuous improvement, when you're looking at your senior leadership team and joining together, it's really about common purpose, common goals, common pathway. And to your point about trusting the plan, understanding the plan, transparency around the plan, if we don't have kind of the end in mind or our sights on where resolving this conflict is going to take us, where developing this relationship is going to take us, where building our senior team is going to take us, I find those to be uniters, is really having that level of understanding about the common goals and the common strategies and the visions and those kind of things. So next year in our company, Capstone, we're starting a new mail newsletter, and it's going to be mailed to hospitals, to CEOs, in particular of rural hospitals. So your organization is going to get one, but we're finding that senior leadership teams in particular need some resources and support for strengthening their senior leadership team in particular. It's a different, you say we're a small group of 5 people, we have different backgrounds, but there's a lot of importance on your relationship. And if that's dysfunctional, which in some ways it's probably always going to be a little bit just because of the personalities and the stressors there and the big work that's there, but strengthening that team around the common purposes and goals, and really is strengthening the organization. So I applaud you for recognizing the importance of the strength of that team and the work to maintain relationships there and have that trust and that psychological safety to have conflict there. And is there anything in particular, any tips or tricks that you use as a senior leadership team to work on that team and its functioning?
I think, that's a great question, Sue. I think the bulk of what we've done is to understand how each of us function. So maybe looking within a bit better to understand certain things about ourselves, and then sharing that with the group to kind of just be on the same page around how we think, how we process things, how we approach different facets of the job. That was one of the key pieces, I think. And then the other piece was just being able to have one-on-ones with, our CEO, being on the same page with him individually, and then being able to come to the table as the greater group to say, hey, we talked a little bit about this, looking for your input. I think that's been the key, is to ask for their input, ask for their ideas, not just coming to the table and saying, this is what I think that we should do. Not only bringing that's important to bring, but then also looping in their input and their viewpoints has really been helpful in just solidifying our relationship as a group. And then sharing our problems, our challenges that we're having as individual leaders with our individual teams, sharing that's okay to break that down. Not every department's going to be perfect. Not every leader is perfect. So how do you just, quote unquote, be real? Come to the table, share what's actually happening in our areas, and ask for help. Say, hey, I'm struggling with X, Y, or Z, and asking for that input. I think that's really been our underlying key to success. We're not a perfect team. I'll never pretend to be that, but I will say that we've come a long way in our relationship building as a senior team.
Yeah, that takes maturity and, the willingness to be vulnerable. Shelby, when you talk about going to your team, especially when you're the clinical leader, the clinical expert, you're representing that part of the organization's functioning, and you're willing to say to your peers around that table and even your boss, I don't have all the answers. I don't have it all together. Help me, or what ideas or suggestions. That alone and that willingness speaks to the strength of that team in very specific ways that isn't always present other places, Shelby. So awesome to hear that about your team. Another thing that we know happens in healthcare organizations in the realm of leadership is that we're also really the champions of change, right? We're setting the vision, we're setting the goals, we're setting the priorities for improvement. And our view of that and our teaching in our company is really to something you spoke to already, Shelby, is that when we engage the frontline, when we give deference to expertise, when again, we don't have all the answers, we don't have it all together, we're not making the decisions in a silo or in our offices all alone, is really engaging and inspiring our employees and our frontline and our clinicians to engage in change. What's maybe been some of maybe even one example of some work that you've been doing there in your organization to champion change, and in particular in ways that engage the frontline?
Sure. So we rolled out this work group, and we actually took this idea from Doug Morse. He calls himself, and we all call him, the rural zealot. He does a great job with rural healthcare. But one of the things that we took from him is something called the operational checkup. And we put that into place. What that really has looked like for our facility in specific is we took all of our clinical areas that we have, all of our clinical operations, and we listed them on a whiteboard in our conference room. And what we did was, the people that were around the table, we had a multidisciplinary team that consisted of frontline staff, consisted of leaders across the organization, consisted of senior leaders, really had at least one of each, any type of area you could across the organization. Even non-clinical areas were involved in this. So we listed all the clinical operations up on the board. Everybody took a vote on which one they felt could use the most work. What do we struggle with? Where do our patient complaints come from? Where is our highest volume? Where's our highest risk? Kind of looking at all of those things, and everybody got to vote on their top three. So our first group that we focused in on that had the highest votes was our emergency room. And what we did was we took the emergency room and we went through every single process that the patient goes through, down the different paths that they might go, all of it. We did a deep dive in all of it. So we started with the patient walks in the front door of our emergency room, they're registered, they work through that process. We made specific improvements in each one of those processes. It took a while, but the wins that we got from that, A, the teamwork, B, the input and the value of our frontline staff and what they do every day, the patient experience, the quality of care, the efficiency, our integral documentation processes. We noted gaps, and it's okay to say, you know what? We had quite a few gaps, and here's how we're going to fix them. And now we've made it through the entire emergency room process to where they're transferred to a higher level of care, to where they're admitted inpatient, to where they're sent to a nursing home. All of those things we took an integral approach to and did this deep dive. And the energy that you feel through that department and through the organization is something I don't know how else you would create, because we were able to take the individual input from anybody that was in that room. We set the stage so that they knew that they were free to speak up. We allowed for space for silence when questions were asked, so that people that maybe aren't comfortable speaking up felt that urge to speak up. So, that uncomfortable silence is always okay, to be able to get people to speak up and share their ideas or their viewpoint, or no, this is actually how it happens. And maybe that's not right. So let's talk about how we can fix it. Just open, transparent, all of the things we were able to accomplish within this work group. And, it started by setting that foundation of, why is this important? Why do we want to do it? And, it was truly for our patients. So our patients have a better experience, so that they trust the care that they're providing us. And then secondary was, how do we improve our working relations between departments? There were gaps that we didn't even know were there when it comes to transferring patients when we're such a small organization, especially on the weekends or on nights. How do you pull those people together so that they're able to function better as an overall team? The amount of things that we were able to tackle within this work group were astounding for me. I had no idea that it was going to take us down the path that it did, but it has been tremendous. Now, life isn't all sunshine and rainbows, so we know that we'll talk about things and maybe they won't follow through on things. So how do we ensure that those things happen? And that comes with auditing. So we have auditing practices out there that help us with those pieces as well. And that helps to hold people accountable. And our middle management really kind of owns that. And then they're able to have those conversations with the frontline staff to say, what are the barriers? Doing that deeper dive. Okay, it sounded like it would work, but what really are the barriers in place? And that frontline staff member is able to tell us that. And then we're able to break that down and work through it again. So, the why, the value, the input of the frontline staff. And, shockingly enough, we had X number of people show up that were invited out of the total number of people that were invited. As we worked through this process, and now we're onto our second department that we're working through, there has been at least 5 or 6 more people join around our table. And in a critical access hospital, that's a large number of people that have joined because they've either heard things from their colleagues, or they're seeing the change that it has, or they have something that they want to share with the group. They want to share their input. So it's been incredible. And I didn't even expect it to go the way that it went, but we went with how the group wanted it to go, and it's been great.
Congratulations. My performance improvement brain and heart just is, just delighted with your story of that example of frontline staff and leaders and clinicians coming together to work through that level of improvement with that much success. You're right, it improves the employee and patient experience, safety, quality. It's just so multifaceted. The wins that are on the other side of collaborating together. I think success breeds more success. To your point of, we made these improvements and the process we used was just as successful as the outcome of it. So that now people want to get involved in the next process and the next process. We use employee-driven teams that are docked up to organizational pillars like organization-wide employee experience team that has clinical and non-clinical frontline representatives from around the organization. And it's interesting that these teams can exist for 10 plus years and they never lose momentum and they never lose the desire that people want to be members, because they're the movers and the shakers and they're making things happen and they know they're heard and they know they're listened to and they know their contributions are wanted and valued and that they make a difference. So you've really put that in place through this example of starting with that top department, emergency department, and now moving on to the next one. You've really set that in motion for ongoing future success. So beyond the success of one thing, you've created success for future things. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, the ownership really goes to the team that works through that. My sole job is to just get the conversation started, and then they take it from there. And they've really done a tremendous job with being open and honest and trustworthy of their team, that it's an okay space to share their concern. And you touched on this too, the importance of them understanding how valuable their input is. That is the key to all of this, is knowing that the work that they do every day makes a difference to the overall picture. And then how we do those nitty-gritty details, their input is extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As leaders, giving that deference to expertise and not being the ones always with the ideas, not being the one that gets to own the decision and make the decision on our own and in isolation, that's a different type of leadership. I want to say it's the ideal or the better leadership, but I know there's a place sometimes to be decisive and take control in a moment or a situation that is right. But for the most part, when we're talking about the level of improvement that was desired in this one department, that the approach you used is, in my view and experience for 30 plus years in healthcare as a leader, it is the pathway to success. It might seem like it takes longer. It might seem like it's, more work, but I think in the end, the results are better and more sustainable and more accepted. You mentioned that, when it comes to will people do it the new, better way, right? We get in these rooms and we come up with, it'd be great to do it this new, better way. But then the rubber meets the road of, are people doing it the new, better way? And change is hard for humans, and that there has to be that accountability. And we need to check in on that and audit that. That's an important part of the process. Improvement isn't just the planning of the new, better way. It's the making it stick and problem solving it, because we're not going to get it right the first time. One of my questions that I used to love when I would follow up and check in on a new process or a new change was, what's getting in your way of doing it the new, better way? Like if you notice in the audit that it's not happening the new, better way, I used to ask, what's getting in the way of doing it the new, better way? And the answers were just as profound as the original problem solving. And it really helped inform what has to happen next if we're really going to make the change. So that's probably where you're at right now. You're starting one new change or focus of change, but at the same time, you can't let the ball drop on that original change, and knowing that it's going to still take time and effort to make it stick.
Absolutely. The continuous auditing and making sure that things are happening is a piece of the puzzle that sometimes can be forgotten. You can't just assume that these things are going to happen, because real life happens, right? You have an influx of patients come in. You forget that you have these new processes because your brain goes back to what's truly hardwired. So it takes time. It takes true commitment to those individuals, but sometimes we have to help them in that commitment to hold them accountable, because when you have those patients in front of you, real life is happening, you can forget those things easily. So just helping them along the way. And then, just being a positive person to keep the fire burning for those individuals, to remind them of the why and, how valuable their input is. So I love your phrase, what's getting in your way of the new, better way? Understanding that, I think, is the key, because, things change, things evolve, and continuously asking that question, I think, would be extremely helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it amazing how time flies in a conversation like this around something that we're both so passionate about and love, which is leadership and improvement and rural healthcare and making it better. Is there any last minute things that you might want to make sure that while you've got an audience of healthcare leaders listening, that there's any wisdom or tips or tricks or anything you want to mention as we wrap up here today?
I think one of the things, Sue, that I would mention that I try to remind myself of frequently is, why do I do what I do? Sometimes we forget that. Sometimes our path changes, but truly looking inside, knowing what your why is, what drives you every day, is so important to remind yourself, so that when you go out and you're talking with your frontline staff, you're talking with your leadership team, you remember your purpose and why you're here personally, and then your purpose as an organization. I think always coming back to that helps with any feelings of, I'm overwhelmed, or I have this pile of to-dos to do. I've got this calendar that's crazy. What is your purpose? why is the organization here, and really being rooted in that, and then being able to prioritize around that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that is useful. Very useful advice, especially new leaders. If they hear that, I think they'll realize that sometimes they're so focused on the practical and the tactical and I've got to learn to do budgets, and I have to learn to do process improvement, and I have to learn how to do schedules and all of those things. And you get really tactical and focused in those ways, but without that deeper connection to why am I even doing this work? It is something that I know causes me to get through the hard days in leadership and healthcare.
Right.
Is, why am I doing this? Why did I raise my hand and say yes to this? Well, thank you, Shelby, for saying yes to leadership in rural healthcare, and in particular, serving as a chief nursing officer. I like to say that nursing officers are uniquely positioned to champion positive change. And you've given so many nice examples of that, of leading leaders, developing leaders, strengthening senior leadership teams, and improving emergency care and the culture there. Now you're on to other things as well. I know there's many things always in the air. So I wish you well on that as we end this year and get ready for a new year. Thank you for being here, and I wish you well.
Thank you, Sue. Thanks for having me on your show today.
Thanks for tuning in to Culture Change RX. If you found value in today's episode and you are a believer in fostering change in healthcare, join us in making a difference. Follow, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with colleagues and your network. Together, we can make a lasting impact. Until next week, keep inspiring positive change.